It's spring 1944, and the Red Army of the Soviet Union is marching south to liberate Crimea from the German forces. The Crimean Tatars are a Turkic people who'd lived on the shores of the Black Sea for centuries. Most of them were delighted to see the Soviet soldiers come to free them. Jafar Emiraliyev was 13 in 1944.
We'd been liberated from the Germans on April the 14th. We were all so happy. We didn't think anything bad would happen. We thought, at last, we can go back to our fields and to school, and everything will be fine.
But it wasn't to be. 1,000 kilometers away in Moscow, Stalin was preparing to deport the entire Tatar population, almost 200,000 of them, as a punishment for what he believed was the collaboration of some of them with their German occupiers. On May the 11th, a secret decree was signed.
During the Patriotic War, many Crimean Tatars betrayed the motherland, deserting Red Army units that defended the Crimea and siding with the enemy. The Crimean Tatars were particularly noted for their savage reprisals against Soviet partisans, and also helped the German invaders to organize the violent roundup of Soviet citizens for German enslavement and the mass extermination of the Soviet people. The State Defense Committee decrees that all Tatars are to be banished from the territory of the Crimea and resettled permanently as special settlers in Uzbekistan. The resettlement will be assigned to the Soviet NKVD.
The NKVD was Stalin's feared secret police. Within days, 20,000 of them had been deployed in Crimea to carry out Stalin's orders. It was to be a coordinated strike across all the Tatar villages, among them Jafar Emiraliyev's.
Но начали всех мужской пол, весь мужской пол.
There were no men in the village. All the men between the age of 18 and 60 had been taken away. They'd been conscripted into the Labour Army. So by May, the only people in our village were women and children and old people. We had a 2-story house. It was my mum and our aunt and 70-year-old grandma and us 4 children. After a few weeks, we were told we had to move into the basement. And a Russian officer came with a woman, I don't know if they were married, and moved into the upstairs floor of our house. It was only later we found out they were preparing the documents to deport us.
Finally, on May the 18th, 1944, Stalin's men struck, early in the morning, as people slept.
Imagine this, you're sleeping at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock. Some soldiers come to the door, knock the door, and tell you have 15 minutes to get ready.
Idil Ismirli's father was Crimean Tatar, and she spent a lot of time talking to survivors like Jafar Emiraliyev, putting together a picture of what happened that day.
Even if they weren't ready in 15 minutes, the soldiers came already, and with sticks and guns they were pushing them, and so the deportation happened under the gunpoint.
I remember that morning on the 18th of May. I woke up early as usual. I was going to take the sheep up to their pasture, when suddenly someone started banging on the door to the basement. It was soldiers. There were 2 or 3 of them. They were shouting at us that we were going to be deported, that it was Stalin's orders and we had to leave the Crimea. They were very rough with us. They yelled and cursed and said we had 15 minutes to collect our things, and then they forced us out into the backyard. We looked around us and we could see that there were soldiers in all the houses in the village, and they were throwing people out of their homes. They began herding us onto the communal land in the middle of the village where we kept the animals.
That story of being woken and of being told they had 15 minutes to collect their belongings and leave was repeated across Crimea.
They were screaming, crying. They had no clue what's going to happen. And some of them didn't even know what to gather. Some of them told me they just picked up their musical instrument. Some picked up a gallon of flour there so that maybe we need something on the road.
We just took what we could find. My mother and my aunt managed to grab some blankets, but we just had the clothes we were standing up in. When we were waiting in the middle of the village, my mother pleaded with the soldiers to let us go back to the house and take some more things. They let us go, and my aunt, I remember, dug up beans from the garden to take, and I grabbed a young goat and slung it over my shoulder. And later, we slaughtered the goat and put the meat in a bucket. And if it hadn't been for that, we wouldn't have survived what was to come next. And we could see the soldiers going into the houses and taking things out of them, stealing things. In the afternoon, they put us into trucks and drove us the 7 or 8 kilometers to the railway station. It was chaos. There were so many people. Mothers got separated from their children. There were people crying and yelling and wailing. When the train arrived, we could see all the wagons were covered. There were no windows. The old people couldn't climb up into the wagons. Everyone was trying to help everyone else. At last, that evening, the train left. And that's when we really understood. We weren't going to see our homeland again.
Unbeknown to them, the Crimean Tatars were being taken across thousands of kilometres of wilderness to Uzbekistan in Central Asia. For more than 20 days they lived crammed into airless carriages with only a single hole in the floor. The Soviet authorities said 200 died on that journey. Tatars say it was far more, maybe as many as 6,000.
I have one story from one of the interviewees. Her name was Dilara Aslanovna Baganovna, and she never forgot that there was a mother with a baby in the train, and they did not let the train stop, so everybody was using a bucket for toilet purposes. It was really dirty, and the baby was crying. There was no food, so this mother couldn't give any milk to the baby, and then baby died. And the soldiers, when somebody died and on those trains, they would just stop the trains and throw the dead bodies out of the train. And they said that when train was leaving, they would hear the jackals, hungry jackals, devouring the bodies of the dead children or dead people. And they said that she stopped even talking to anybody, and within 2 days she was also dead on the train.
No one died in our wagon, but we saw the soldiers taking dead bodies out of the other carriages. I don't know what they did with the corpses. There was this terrible smell. There were no windows in the wagons, and everyone was so dirty, and our clothes and hair were full of lice. The train stopped from time to time just for a short while, and we'd rush out to try to collect firewood to build a fire to cook food. I remember the soldiers coming along and tipping over the bowls of what little food we'd managed to get, spilling it everywhere.
When they at last reached Uzbekistan, the Crimean Tatars were put into camps where they were used as forced labour and treated as virtual prisoners. Thousands died in the hot Uzbek desert of typhoid and malaria. It wasn't until almost a quarter of a century later, in 1967, that the Crimean Tatars were finally rehabilitated. And until the 90s and the collapse of the Soviet Union, that many were at last able to return home. Jafar Amiraliyev lives back in Crimea now, where he worked as a university professor until he retired.